twilight's less gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave.
If you would join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
now the Texas allegiance. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to you, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible.
And now we'd like to bring up honor-bound Pastor Frank for our opening blessing.
How's everybody doing today? How many of you like to ride motorcycles? How many of you believe you need to be able to choose to wear your helmet? Yeah. You know, I've believed in freedom since I was a little boy because my father was a veteran. And if anybody ever believed in freedom, he did. And he always instilled in us children that we were free because of the men and women that fought in the armed forces. It's always also been proven throughout history that if someone tries to do something that they're self, it can be very hard. But it's also proven that the more people that get together and work together, the more can be accomplished. So I'm going to ask you right now if you'll just bow with me. And I'm just going to ask God's blessing on this gathering. My Father, I thank you first for this beautiful day you gave us for this event. Thank you for all of the people. God, some of them took off work. They've sacrificed to be here. And I pray, God, that you would bless them. But God, today as we do your business, I pray, Lord, that you would give us wisdom. And God, that you would give us favor with those that we need favor with to see the things accomplished that need to be accomplished in this next session. Father, we thank you for your grace and mercy. I pray, God, that you'd keep those safe even when this event is over, that everyone travels home safely, everyone enjoys this. And God, I pray in Jesus' name that you would let your blessings reside upon us. And I ask it in Jesus' name. And all God's people said, Amen. Amen.
Thank you so much. All right, welcome Texas, 2019 Legislative Day. You guys pumped? You know who your reps are? Awesome. Today is the day that you start to make things happen for 2019. We have a very busy day planned for you today, so I'm not going to take too much of your time. I am Gypsy Mini-Me. I am the Region 1 COC&I Chairman, and I work for you. So I'm happy to be here. Thank you so much. I'm going to immediately kick this off with the person who sponsored today, Senator Kirk Watson. He has sponsored us today. He's a friend of ours for sure. So please welcome and give him your undivided attention.
Thank you. Well, isn't it a great day to be in Austin, Texas? Well, I just want to, I'm not going to take much of your time. I want to just say that I'm with you and very pleased that you are all here today. And so part of what I want to say is thank you. A couple of things real quick as you're talking to different members of the legislature on issues. One of the issues that I was very worried about was as the Department of Public Safety was undergoing sunset review by the Sunset Commission of the state of Texas. One of the things that was recommended early on was that the motorcycle safety program actually be done away with. I worked very hard to make sure that that didn't happen. And so we will, I want you all to be up to date on what happens with the motorcycle safety program. There will be two places that you can be supportive of that program. One is we will be filing, we're waiting for Legislative Council to get a draft of the bill back right now, but I'll be filing a separate independent bill that keeps the motorcycle safety program going forward. That will be an independent bill, but it will also be a part and parcel of the Department of Public Safety sunset bill. We want to try to pass that in both places if we can. You only need to pass it once, but as we all know, safety is very important, and I consider that being safe. Let's pass it twice if we can do it. The other bill that I want to make sure that you're aware of is Senate Bill 273. Senate Bill 273, we all know that lane splitting can, in some instances, make driving safer for bikers, and so I've refiled my lane splitting bill again. I will continue to refile this bill until we get a hearing on it. And I hope that you will help us get a hearing and you'll let people know that you favor allowing that sort of filtering when we're in heavy congestion on some of our roads. Another bill that I'll be filing today. We'll file today a bill that makes electric motorcycles eligible for a rebate under the Texas Emission Reduction Program. Several companies, as you may know, are coming out with electric motorcycles, which are positive for they're just as positive for the environment as a four-wheel vehicle. So I want you to be able to, if you want one of those motorcycles, to access the same rebate that you would be able to get if you were in a four-wheel vehicle. Here's the thing. I ride. In fact, I'm not riding enough right now. That's one of the downsides of being in a legislative session. I ride. I care deeply about your independence and your ability to ride. So here's my pledge to you. You may not live in Senate District 14, which, by the way, you're standing in Senate District 14. It's most of Travis County and all of Bastrop County. You may not live in Senate District 14, which is the district I represent, but I'm your senator. So call on me if I can be helpful to you. God bless all of you. Ride safely.
What's up, Patriots? All right. So let's get this party moving. Thank you, Senator Watson, for coming up and sharing the wealth there of information. Next, we have Attorney Millie Thompson. She's going to come in and drop some more knowledge on you.
Hey everybody, thank you so much for having me yet again. Y'all have got to be tired of hearing me speak, but I appreciate you. My name is Millie Thompson. I have the honor and privilege of representing many different men who are members of motorcycle clubs. I say that about all my clients and I mean it about them, and I'll tell you why in a second. I've been asked to speak on the First Amendment and the right to associate. I represent some men who are arrested without probable cause in violation of their Fourth and First Amendment rights on May 15th or May 17th of 2015. I don't know how to talk about the First Amendment and the right to associate without talking about some cases, so I'll mention two. The first is a case called Button, and in Button, the Supreme Court in the 60s said that law firms, lawyers, have the right to solicit business if it means changing society for the better, for the civil rights. And they mentioned the right to associate. The second case is a case called Robles, also out of the 60s, where a person who was told that the statute said that he could not work for a defense contractor if he was a member of a certain group that the government found unpopular. And the Supreme Court said that you could not condition employment based on affiliation alone, that the statute essentially made it guilty by association, and that was wrong. It violated the First Amendment. I'm not going to tell you what groups these cases belong to. I'm not going to say which unpopular groups were at issue in these cases. And the reason why is it doesn't matter. In 1960, they had no idea what kind of groups would be unpopular in 2020. And 50 years from now, we have no idea what kind of groups are going to be unpopular then. But for the clients who are fighting for First Amendment rights and fighting for the right to associate without being criminalized for merely association alone, they're doing something bigger than themselves. Just as Button and in Robles, they were fighting for the right to associate, that we can actually cite those cases in our lawsuits now. The civil rights heroes who are suing law enforcement today are doing the same. The last thing I'll say is this. When I say that I have the honor and privilege of representing people in the motorcycle community, it's because, unlike many across the population, you guys know your rights better than anybody. And you're the more likely to say that the world will not be this way within the reach of your arm compared to anyone else. And that's what civil rights is all about. And we all have to hold the line, because you never know when it's going to be our group that's unpopular. Thank you so much for having me, you guys. I hope you have a great legislative day.
You want to hear from one of your own besides me for once? Let's talk about your Calavera smoke, Nueces County DA, Mark Gonzalez.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. I want to tell you that if you have not ever ridden a motorcycle, you have not lived. It was a beautiful sight coming from Hardtails in Georgetown, driving down here, seeing people of all face, all walk, and all color, riding as one. Can I get a hell yeah? My name is Calavera Smoke. Saludos and greetings from me, my brothers, and everyone else. And I think I'm not here to speak to you because I am a Calavera. I think I'm here to speak to you because somehow, by the grace of God, people voted me to be the district attorney in Nueces County. And you know, as we stand here today, everybody up there is listening. I promise you, they're listening to when you chant, they're listening to when you cheer, and if they don't hear you now, they should hear you once we wrap it up here. Being Americans, we have a right. Before I go into that, I didn't really write anything, but I want to recognize some people. The biker community is a beautiful community. They will give you the shirt off your back. When a man is down, they will go get you. When somebody needs help, they will provide for you, whether it's food, shelter, or clothing. And so I wanted to express my thanks to the biker community because it is a great cross-section of what America really is. You have people from, you know, Bikers for Christ, ex-military, people who served their country, and now sometimes are actually being, I guess, looked at in a bad light. So thank you to all the veterans who have served. If you are a veteran, raise your hand. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for your service to Texas and your service as Americans. And as I bring up, we are all Americans. We all have a right to free speech, right? Who loves that right? Yeah. We all have a right to bear arms. Who loves that right? Yeah. But also as Texans, not only do we share in those rights, sometimes we say what? Come and take it. And so I was asked here to speak regarding a license to carry, or what used to be known as CHLs, and if you are a patch holder. And so what I want to let you know is that there has been some criticism or actual some enforcement that anyone with the patch is a gang member. And to their surprise, I do not feel that is true. Does anybody think that's true? And what do they say? Stuff rolls down. And so who does that affect? That affects all the independent riders. So if you feel that if you love riding motorcycles, if you enjoy the wind, if you enjoy riding with your buddies, it affects you as well. And what I want to express to you is that the main thing that you need to do is to voice your opinion. You need to get out and vote. I know that Representative Watson said that he is your senator, he is your representative, and I want you to know that I am your DA. But I am only one man in only one county. Texas is comprised of 254 counties. That means that there are 254 different DAs. Everybody understands that ignorance is bliss, right? Anybody heard that? What does that mean? It means go meet your elected district attorney. Let them know who you are, what you do, and what you're about. Once they get to know you, once they understand where your heart is actually at, I promise you that they won't probably take any cases where a patch holder who got it through a CHL is getting arrested and now comes before his court. Sorry, court. Court. There you go. Apologize on that. But with that being said, think about it. To get a CHL, number one, you can't have a felony, right? Number two, you can't have gotten some other convictions. There are almost 21 different things on that list that allow you not to even have a CHL. Who here has a CHL? Raise your hand. Look at all the people around here that have a CHL. So what does that mean? By logic, you're not a felon. By logic, you don't have a mental issue. So for anyone to say that you are anything else besides a law-abiding citizen is only they're saying it because they're profiling you guys. So what I would suggest to you is get to know your district attorney, because in Nueces County, I promise you, anybody that has a patch and gets caught with a unlawful carrying a weapon, and that is the sole thing you have. Now, if you got some other stuff on you, I can't really. I'll see what I can do about that. But for that sole reason alone, know that you have a friend in Nueces County. And if your district attorney doesn't feel that way, guess what? Just how some people don't like me, guess what you can do? You can vote him out. So just how you exercise your right to bear arms, you can also exercise your right to vote. So I challenge many people to go voice your opinions to the senators or the representatives and tell them to think with wisdom. But with wisdom, you have to use courage, because you have to say something when you're scared that people aren't going to like it. You have to stand up when people are sitting down. And I can tell you that on behalf of me, it is an honor to speak to you guys. Get involved. If anyone has any questions for me, always feel free to let me know. One of the great things that I noticed when I was walking in the procession, it was an American Legion rider. I don't know, he's probably right there. His patch said, "I fight for my rights, do you?" And that is the most important thing that I can tell you is from a patch that I saw walking up to this beautiful Capitol in these steps. Fight for your rights, everybody. You have them, people died for them, and so don't let that go in vain. Other than that, I think that's all I got. And so thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure. This is the crowd that I get most nervous about, but thank you for having me. I'm voting again in 2020. Tell your friends, elect the DA, Mark Gonzalez.
He said thank you. Next up, AMA, Texas Chapter, Jude.
You notice, wasn't that wonderful that he didn't try to pronounce my last name? Yeah. It's always just Jude. We understand that, right? I wanted to thank y'all for allowing me to come here today and speak to you about one little part of the puzzle that we have going this session of the legislature. And I apologize at the same time because it's a nice bright day, so that is not a halo. Okay, that's just bounce. That's just bounce light. So what I want to talk to you about just briefly is something that Senator Watson alluded to, and that's the DPS sunset legislation that is forthcoming that's going to be very important for us. It's important for our motorcycle safety program. Now, I call it our program. The reason why I call it that is it doesn't belong to folks in here. It belongs to us. The reason why it belongs to us is because we pay for it. We pay for it with $5 every time we get a Class M license and $5 every time we renew a Class M license. That money is dedicated, and the Transportation Code says it can only be used to defray the cost of motorcycle safety education. So that's what we need to make sure happens. Now, historically, and I say historically, there's been all kinds of little ways to redistribute that money within DPS and outside of DPS. And Senator Watson hit the nail on the head when he says, you know, this just has to stop because there are better places to put our program. And that's going to be one of the big recommendations that come out of this, is to move the Motorcycle Safety Unit or Bureau out of DPS and move it over to TDLR, a place that it fits much better. That's a regulatory agency. And then a lot of what Senator Watson calls advocacy, a lot of that will move to Texas A&M, Texas Transportation Institute, and Texas Engineering Extension Service. So instructor recruitment, instructor training, all the information that we need. And one thing that is really going to be great coming out of this sunset bill is that we will now have a motorcycle safety advisory board. How many of you feel like if I'm kicking in $5 into a program to build a motorcycle safety program that maybe I ought to have say in it? How many of you think that? Well, historically, we just really haven't. But this Motorcycle Safety Advisory Board will finally give us that opportunity, because at least 2 members, the way it's written now, will be members of the Motorcycle Safety Advisory Board, and they will be writers. So that's us. Now, what we really want to push for is at least 4 members. So when this bill comes out, we'll be before the committees, and we'll be advocating for boosting that so we have more voice in the Motorcycle Safety Advisory Board, so that we will have an opportunity to have input on what's our curriculums look like in the future. That's important. Not just that we use something canned off the shelf. We need something built for Texans. We need something that would impact where we're having the most fatalities and serious injury crashes. And so that's what we want. And we can get all that this session of the legislature. So I would remind you, as you visit with your representatives and your senators today, this is not on your cheat sheet, but all you need to tell them is that you support the findings and recommendations of the Sunset Committee. That's all you need to say, and they'll understand what you are talking about. So thank you again for having me up here and listening to me running diatribe about motorcycle safety training. And once again, I apologize for the bounce flash off the top of my head. Thank you very much. Y'all have a great day today.
Last but not least, Double D.
It's a little bright up here. My name's Double D. I'm the national spokesperson for the National Council of Clubs, and I also founded an organization called the Motorcycle Profiling Project a number of years ago. Motorcycle profiling is a national epidemic. Texas is no exception. This is the 3rd time I've stood on the steps of the Texas Capitol arguing for motorcycle profiling relief. Legislators in this state house have previously recognized motorcycle profiling as an issue. A little over 10 years ago, they added 1 line to Title 10 of Texas Code that requires motorcycle profiling sensitivity training to law enforcement agencies and agents in the state of Texas. Unfortunately, it has been highly ineffective. Since 2015, based on the most recent statistical data from the National Motorcycle Profiling Survey, motorcycle profiling incidents in Texas have risen 100% since 2015. And as Millie mentioned the incident that occurred on May 17th of 2015, I think this gives us some insight on why that's occurring. That's what I believe. After our nearly 200 people were arrested without individualized probable cause after the events at Twin Peaks and Waco, motorcycle profiling incidents not only in Texas but across the country began to experience an uptick. Independent of Waco, what sort of form are these incidents taking? Mark spoke about it a little bit, and it's one of the issues that I'm most concerned about. Particularly in El Paso, there are dozens of pending cases where people have been stopped and arrested merely because of association in a motorcycle club, even when they have a concealed license permit to carry. I believe it's a misapplication of the statute. There is a statute in Texas that says gang members are not allowed to have guns. However, that statute requires that you connect that specific individual to criminal activity. That's part of the probable cause to arrest someone under that statute. It's a misapplication of statute, yet when you get arrested, you have to show up to court, you have to spend money on an attorney, and it is happening across the state, but particularly in El Paso. Independent of that, in the hometown of Austin here, in the state capital, we've had incidents of one a couple of years ago that Millie Thompson, who spoke earlier, defended a client who was pulled over for a traffic infraction, immediately notified that he was not going to receive a citation, yet he was held on the side of the road against his will and forced to take pictures of every tattoo on his body or be forced to go to jail. That individual sued the city of Austin, or at least the Austin Police Department, and received a settlement, and a positive settlement, but the incident should not have occurred in the first place. These statistics that have most recently been revealed in 2018 suggest that motorcycle profiling incidents have risen from 22% reporting in 2015 to well over 50% reporting in the most recent year. That's a massive uptick, and it means that the will of the motorcycling community and the will of the state legislature in Texas is not being fulfilled. They attempted to deal with the issue a little over 10 years ago with a lighthearted piece of legislation, but I think now we have a good enough argument to say we need to add teeth to this legislation. When I was here 2 years ago, 2017, we attempted to get a sponsor for the bill. We were unsuccessful. We had some ears, but we were unsuccessful getting a sponsor. But I think that conditions have massively changed since then. The first thing is that was before more than 150 people who were falsely arrested in Waco and held had all of their charges dropped and most of their property returned. That had not occurred in 2017. Also, I don't believe that we had an identifiable pattern of evidence where they were targeting members of the motorcycle community in a blatant attempt to deny Second Amendment rights and disarm one of the most active political constituencies, not only in the country, but particularly in Texas. Look at the hundreds of people that are here. Many states have changed their reality with less people that are standing on the campus of the Texas Capitol right now. With the people here, you can change your reality. Remember, there is no democracy without participation. The final thing is I think that we have the statistical data that we need that we did not have previously that correlates with all of these incidents we know are occurring, and that is very sound statistical data with 99% reliability and a 1.4% margin of error that says motorcycle profiling incidents have increased 100% over the last few years. Armed with the pattern of evidence, it's undeniable, and statistical data that verifies that, I believe it is time, and also ample time, that we obtain a sponsor for a cost-free, no fiscal impact measure that does three simple things. Prohibits the practice of motorcycle profiling, provides a stringent definition of what motorcycle profiling is, and also provides a mechanism of relief, a private cause of action, for any victim of profiling. Obviously, the Texas State Legislature would never have passed a one-sentence piece of legislation requiring sensitivity training if they intended for law enforcement to increase these incidents at the rate of 100%. I believe that we are perfectly poised and perfectly positioned as a community here to obtain sponsorship and become the third state to pass comprehensive legislation in the United States of America. The final thing that we did not have in 2017 or previously that we have now is the United States Senate on December 11th unanimously approved a resolution that directs every state, including the state of Texas, to adopt policies to condemn and prevent motorcycle profiling. This is no longer an obscure law that passed in the Northwest state of Washington or in the East Coast state of Maryland. This is now a legitimate national policy discussion. I think one of the things that highlights the fact that it's a national discussion is the amount of people that you have here, but also the amount of people, in particular people that came from out of state. We have Jim Barr standing over here in the yellow, holding up the Long Island Abort Supporters Texas Bikers, right? This is the second time he showed up to the state capitol. He's an avid member of ABATE, founded Long Island ABATE with over 2,000 members. He's a very active participant in the Motorcycle Riders Foundation, and in fact was at the Bikers in the Beltway lobbying successfully, I'd say, to pass this Senate resolution. Everybody is looking at the state of Texas because Texas has the second worst profiling problem statistically behind California, which happens to have 1 million registered motorcyclists. We're focused on Texas because what happens here can have a definitive impact on what happens to everybody. I know y'all felt what I would call the Waco effect. After Waco and the amount of profiling that increased, the amount of scrutiny. I don't know if you'd be surprised to know that the impact of Waco affected us all the way in Washington and all the way to the state of New York. What happens in Texas impacts the entire country. And that works in a positive way too. If you're able to take this step and pass comprehensive legislation to condemn the practice of motorcycle profiling, I believe the dominoes will begin to fall at a much quicker rate than they have passing it in Washington and passing it in Maryland. Although that's important, we passed Washington in 2011. It took us 5 years before we were able to repeat that in another state in Maryland. I believe if the state of Texas does it, because it's such high profile, then those dominoes will quickly begin to fall. Independent of Texas, there's 5 other states that I'm working with for the 2019 session to pass identical and comprehensive legislation to combat this problem. I've been here from the beginning, and I will be here in the end. We produced, as a working group and a strike force, nearly a 50-page legislative proposal that covers every policy argument and comprehensively explains the pattern of evidence to justify this policy. All the work has been done. Remember, there's no democracy without participation, and silence is consent. When there's a hearing on any of these pieces of legislation, the best thing that this community could do is show up like this. Be a visible constituency, and it's hard to ignore the motorcycling community. We're rather unique. So I'm going to extend the same promise that I always have. I will be here for the state of Texas from the beginning to the end. You can rely on me. I will come back to testify in committee hearings if necessary, and anything that the Motorcycle Profiling Project can do, we're here to do. I appreciate y'all inviting me back. I love the state of Texas.
Thank you, Double D. So guess what? We're done. All right. Now, a couple of points, housekeeping. Remember, COC and I, and these groups up here, ABATE, AMA, it is a nonpartisan group, all of us, okay? So we're gonna talk to Democrats, we're gonna talk to Republicans, we're gonna talk to independents. Make sure we don't step on any toes, because these are relationships we're building for everything that we're trying to do today. So be tactful, be educated, be firm, but let them know what you really think, all right? Tactfully. If you got a bottle of water, it has a home. It's in one of these trash cans, so please, let's leave this place as good as we found it. And again, myself, Region 1 Commander, Grim Guardian Clutch, I thank you for coming out. A lot of you from out of town, from everybody that got involved. Thank you for making this successful. Get in your house. Whose house is it? Who?